Can a team leader publicly betray his star pilot and expect everything to continue as if nothing? Today I will tell you how Frederic Vasseur launched a direct bomb to Lewis Hamilton after disaster in Spain and what this means for Ferrari's future. From free training, the signals were worrisome. Hamilton, who had maintained a relatively contained profile in his first races with the Scuderia, exploded in frustration on the radio in describing the car as inconducible. It was not an isolated comment or fruit of a bad moment. For several laps, Hamilton repeated messages loaded with impotence that reflected a total disconnection with the SF-25. The car did not respond, and beyond the times by return, what alarmed was the pilot's body language on the track. Constant corrections, unusual blockages, and a rhythm that was diluted in each sector. The classification also offered respite. Although Hamilton achieved a respectable position, the process to achieve that position was tortuous. The British experienced difficulties in putting the tires in an optimal temperature window, something essential in a path like Montmeló, where the wear and lateral load are especially demanding. Despite the team's attempts to adjust the configuration, the discomfort remained latent. And that discomfort became despair once the traffic lights went out on Sunday. The race began with a spark of hope. Hamilton made an effective exit, winning the position of George Russell and provisionally placing himself in fourth. But that spark was extinguished quickly. In just 10 laps, Ferrari ordered Hamilton to give his position to Charles Leclerc, arguing that Monegasco had a higher rhythm. That decision not only changed the course of the race, but also dynamited any perception of equality within the team. For Hamilton, accustomed to leading structures, being turned into a squire of his partner so early in the year was a blow to his sport's pride and an unequivocal signal of internal tensions. The rest of the race was a nightmare. Hamilton was trapped in traffic, lost rhythm progressively, and was overcome by both Mercedes during the stop cycle. Each attempted recovery was suffocated by the lack of traction in medium curve and for strategic decisions that, far from helping him, seemed to aggravate himself back after return. The storm was completed when Nico Hülkenberg, with a visibly lower Sauber, advanced it on the main line in the penultimate return, sealing a humiliating result. To be fighting for the podium, he went on to a 9th place that barely served to add symbolic points. For a pilot of his size, the contrast to the expectations was devastating. The most revealing thing happened outside the car. In the mixed area, Hamilton was a wall of silence. His answers were sharp, dry, even condescending. Not a smile, not a word of support towards the team. When asked if there was something positive to rescue from the weekend, his gaze said everything before responding with a brief, no. The nonverbal language was as blunt as its track statements. The atmosphere between the pilot and Ferrari was on the verge of collapse. This act, although disguised as simple bad weekend, contained all the ingredients of a greater fracture. Because what was created in Barcelona was not a bad isolated result, it was the accumulation of errors, frustrations, and disconnection between what was promised in pre-season and what the track is returning. In that context, what came later by Frederic Vasseur was not only unexpected, it was a bomb. A bomb that was created precisely in the midst of this disaster. Most internal crises in Formula One are handled cautiously. The differences are discussed privately, disagreements softened before the press, and errors are covered with diplomatic phrases. But what happened after the GP of Spain 2025 between Frederic Vasseur and Lewis Hamilton broke all those unwritten codes. It was an unprecedented public exhibition of the tension that boils under the surface of the Ferrari-Hamilton project, and perhaps the clearest indication that something structurally does not work. In an interview after the race, Vasseur not only did not defend his star pilot. It went further. I contradicted him. He openly questioned Hamilton's statements in which he described the SF-25 as the most inconducible car he has handled. According to the head of the team, the British comments were a bit extreme, and added that the car was not as horrible as Lewis said on the radio. These words, unbroken to the Sky Sports F1 cameras, rumbled throughout the paddock as a public slap. To understand the magnitude of this statement, the context must be considered. Vasseur is not a rookie in the management of top pilots. Know the unwritten rules of the political management of a figure of the size of Hamilton. Not only is a world champion facing 7 titles, he is managing one of the most prestigious and observed brands of sport. And yet, he chose the path of public confrontation. He did not soften his words. He left no room for ambiguity. It was direct, categorical, and, above all, deliberate. Beyond the media impact, the technical content of the comment is also revealing. Vasseur defended the competitiveness of the car, noting that, in the last stint, Hamilton had marked times similar to the 2 leaders of the race while using soft tires. In his vision, that denied any narrative that the SF-25 was completely dysfunctional. But in reality, what I was doing was invalidating the pilot's perception from cockpit. I was saying, in other words, I don't believe you. The data says something else. This type of contradiction, coming from the head of the team, has deep implications. It is a sign of distrust. It is the cancellation of the pilot's testimony as a source of truth. And in Formula One, where communication between engineers and pilots must be based on absolute confidence, breaking that link can be lethal for the performance of the set. With these words, Vasseur not only questioned Hamilton. He sent a message to the entire team, to the sponsors, to the media and the world. The responsibility for what happened did not fall on the team. The pilot also had part of guilt. That statement, even if you can have something technical truth, became an emotional bomb. Because in Formula One, as in any high-performance environment, the balance between truth, perception, and leadership is fragile. And when it breaks, the consequences are usually explosive. What happened in the Spain Grand Prix was not just a frustrating career, nor a simple difference of opinion between pilot and team leader. It was the public demonstration of a structural crack within Ferrari, a crack that threatens to destabilize the entire project built around Lewis Hamilton. When a Formula One team exhibits its disunity so openly, the consequences expand as waves in a pond. They affect internal morals, they weaken the general strategy, and, the most dangerous of all, they generate a narrative of crisis that takes their own life inside and outside the paddock. The first thing that cracks in these scenarios is trust. Hamilton arrived in Ferrari as a saving figure, a legend willing to close his career by returning the glory to Montmeló. The promise was mutual. The team would give him a competitive car, and he would offer his talent and experience as a leader to forge a champion. But when the internal discourse finds no support in the results, and above it is publicly denied by those who should support it, that alliance begins to crack. It is not only technical disagreements, but about a loss of faith in the common purpose. For a pilot like Hamilton, whose career has been built not only based on talent, but also around carefully managed environments, these signs are deeply disturbing. He knows how to read the language of F1 beyond the times by return. A team order that relegates it behind your partner. A failed strategy without convincing explanation. And now, a public contradiction of your boss. All that is no accident, it is a pattern. And the patterns in Formula One usually anticipate cycle changes or imminent ruptures. From the institutional point of view, Ferrari is also in a delicate position. Vasseur's leadership had been well received in its first full year, especially after the progressive recovery of 2024. But this public confrontation maneuver raises questions about its ability to handle the political balance between stars, engineers, and directive. Internally, a team needs cohesion, clear direction, and sense of unity. When a pilot perceives that the team doubts his word, when engineers feel that they are trapped between two contradictory narratives, and when the directive notes that international media speak more of crisis than evolution, the land becomes unstable. For all this, Vasseur's words were more than a simple opinion. They were an alarm signal. A warning that the coexistence in Ferrari will not be simple, and that if the bridge between pilot and team is not restored soon, the 2025 season could be remembered not as the year of the resurgence, but as the year in which Ferrari let the greatest opportunity of his modern era. What happened in the 2025 Grand Prix was more than a sports stumble. It was a raw demonstration, without filters, of how a structure as complex as Ferrari can be broken from within when there is no real synergy among its fundamental parts. The incorporation of Lewis Hamilton into the Scuderia was not only one of the most shocking news in the modern history of F1, but a declaration of intentions by Montmeló. They wanted to win again. They wanted to rebuild a winning culture. They wanted to make history. But the way to the top is plagued with difficult decisions, leadership tensions, and sacrifices that, if they are not managed with surgical precision, are transformed into inevitable conflicts. Frederic Vasseur made a decision that very few dare to execute in an environment as politicized as Formula One. Openly discredit their most media, more laureate, and in theory more influential pilot. He did it with knowledge of cause, knowing that his words would have a global resonance and that each syllable would be analyzed in detail. And in doing so, he broke a delicate balance. Because in Ferrari, as in any large team, details are not anecdotal, they are defining. Ferrari, meanwhile, faces a turning point. If you do not take immediate measures to recompose internal relationships, to redefine communication dynamics, and to restore mutual respect among its main figures, the dream of returning to the top could become a prolonged nightmare. Opportunities in modern Formula One do not abound. Domain cycles are increasingly closed, more technical, more dependent on operational precision. Wasting a season for poor internal management is not only expensive at points, it is devastating at the brand level. And this is perhaps the most critical point. The damage of an internal fracture does not stop in the championship. It is filtered towards engineers, mechanics, sponsors, media, fans. The narrative gets out of control. Morality deflates. The objectives are diluted. And what was an ambitious project transforms into a constant struggle to maintain the minimum cohesion necessary not to collapse at all. And you, do you think the Scuderia can save this relationship, or is it already a lost case? I read you down.